Good morning, everyone. So it's 9 o'clock, and I suppose we'll get started with the public hearing, the virtual public meeting. Thank you so much for being here on a Wednesday morning at 9 a.m. I know everyone has a lot on their plate, so I really appreciate everyone taking the time to come hear what we have planned for 2022 and hear a little bit about what we've accomplished in the last year. So if you are here to hear about economic development activities from the Community Development Division of the City of Colorado Springs, you are in the right place. I'd also like to thank my colleagues for joining me today. We've got Barb Van Hoy, who's manning the virtual meeting. I'll be presenting today. Naomi Clark is not with us this morning, but we also have Christy Miller, who's helping manage questions. So as you have questions throughout the meeting, this will be, the first half will have content, and then the second half will have Q&A. So I know that, this isn't as robust a conversation as we can have in person. So I really appreciate everyone's willingness to still stay with us in the virtual meeting format. The nature of the work that a lot of our partners do, we work with a lot of vulnerable populations. So I appreciate your patience with us with the virtual format. So with this being a live event, if you're joining us on your desktop, you are muted. However, please feel free to use the Q&A box on your screen. It's a little dialogue bubble with the question mark. Use that for any questions that you have along the way. There is a bit of a time delay between when we're presenting and when we get and when the listener hears. So we will try to accommodate that and wait a little bit. But please feel free to just send those questions as they come to you. If they're kind of topical with what we're talking about on screen, we'll try to answer them live in the moment. If not, we can save that for the dialogue section at the end. If you're calling in, you can unmute yourself when it's time for the discussion by pressing *6 and ask a question. Then we'll definitely prompt you again at that point. And again, whether you're online or calling in and you want to check out the slides that we're sharing, this will be recorded and the slides will be shared on our website, coloradosprings.gov/community development. And of course, this is not the only opportunity to give your input. We're working on this action plan for the next couple of months. So there's plenty of time to follow up with us and ask a question via email at communitydevelopment@coloradosprings.gov or give us a call at the number on the screen, 719-385-5912. If you would like captions on this live event, go to your gear icon on the screen and click on captions and subtitles, and you have the option of several different languages to follow along with the conversation. So today's goals, we're just giving a pretty brief overview of what funding we can expect from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, and share with you what other tools, resources, and partnerships that we use to make the most of those funds and serve the people that these funds are designed to serve. We'll also share a little bit about what we're hoping to accomplish in the coming year. And the main reason we're here is to hear from you. We want to hear about what you and your community are experiencing and how we can incorporate that into the plan and make sure that our action plan addresses the actual conditions on the ground and reflects your experience. And then lastly, we'll share a little bit of how you can follow the progress of the plan and, accessing funds, schedule, things like that. So here we are to talk about the money. Expected resources is what we say to to estimate what we're getting from HUD. As a entitlement jurisdiction, the City of Colorado Springs does get a certain amount from HUD by formula. And we don't know what that's going to be. It depends on a lot of things. It depends on the budget that Congress passes, which right now is very much in the news, and we are not close to having one. So we just do our best and estimate. This year we are estimating an increase from previous years. It is easier to overestimate than underestimate. We do in the plan, when it comes out, you will see that we have a plan for how to increase it or decrease it, depending on what the actual numbers turn out to be. It is easier from a city budgeting perspective to kind of overestimate a little bit. So we receive funding from 3 signature programs from HUD. CDBG, or the Community Development Block Grant Program. That's the biggest bucket. It's the longest running program, kind of the original block grant program from the 70s. And it has a pretty large umbrella, and that's really the main funding source for economic development that we'll talk about today. The other 2, Home Investment Partnership, that's really for affordable housing, both in the form of, new multifamily construction, down payment assistance, and tenant-based rental assistance. Lastly, we have the Emergency Solutions Grant, or ESG. It's our smallest formula grant, and it covers homeless services. So things like emergency shelter supports, rapid rehousing, homelessness prevention. And then the top little wedge you see there is program income. And that's income that we receive from past projects that we've financed, mostly new construction or rehab projects that we've helped finance in years past. So altogether with the whole bucket, the whole 2022 annual action plan, we are tasked with telling HUD what we were going to do with all of these sources of income. But for today's purposes, we're just going to talk about CDBG because that's the main source of funding for economic development, and I'll explain how. So with this CDBG grant, as you see here, we're expecting about $3.5 million. We divvy it up into different activities, and jurisdictions have the ability to decide which activities CDBG covers, which activities to deploy in the next year. We do it in 5-year terms. If you want to learn a little bit more about our 5-year plan, we do have a video on our website that explains how our 5-year plan informs our annual plans. So in our 5-year plan, we did create the economic development activity. That's not the only one. CDBG, the way the City of Colorado Springs divides its CDBG program up, we have an infrastructure and facilities program, public services program that supports nonprofits, economic development, affordable housing through rehab and preservation, and administration. We are 100% funded by grant funds, so the administration piece covers all of the work that our division does in keeping our subrecipients compliant, making sure that funds are spent in a timely and consistent way. So that's how that CDBG is. In terms of economic development activities, we can go about it through 2 different activities in the CDBG program. The economic development activity itself, which represents 5% of our CDBG budget, which in 2022 amounts to about $176,000. The other program, CDBG Public Services, that's a pretty generic program. It's just assistance to nonprofits that serve low-income populations. Traditionally, we have used the public services activity to support housing stability services, either housing navigation, housing counseling, housing stability, payments for people who are behind on rent. This year, in the last 2 years since COVID hit, we have diversified it a little bit to add in a bit of kind of financial resilience type projects, and some of those do involve job training. So it is a good complement to what's other economic development activities like microenterprise assistance, which I have some exciting news from the field about that. So with our economic development activity, this is a new activity for us, new in that we just created it with our latest 5-year plan, which came out in 2020. We had 2 programs that were slotted for this program. One was called the Commercial Frontage and Facade Improvement Grant, and that was for exterior kind of remodeling funding for small businesses. But when COVID hit, we realized that people had much more pressing needs than exterior improvements to their businesses. They're really more interested in staying afloat and receiving direct financial support. So our Micro Enterprise Assistance Fund provides direct financial support for businesses. It offers technical assistance, access to professional services, like having a tax prep person, a CPA, access to legal services, generally capacity building type activities, job training, kind of entrepreneur camps. So what we did when COVID hit, oh, I'm sorry, I'm jumping ahead a little bit. So just to share a little bit about how these funds reach the community, they are a little different by design. CDBG Public Services, as I mentioned, is supposed to be a support for nonprofits, public agencies, faith-based organizations, and their reimbursement grants. It's a competitive application that comes out every year. And they are very competitive. You have to be a pretty organized and financially stable organization. And if you're interested about how your organization can access these funds rather, for job training services, you can email my colleague Naomi Clark, or you can send any questions to the community development page if you have for more general questions. The economic development program that is available to private businesses, but we still use a program administrator. So when COVID hit, we partnered with Exponential Impact, a business incubator, to figure out how to help ultra small businesses, micro enterprise as defined as a business with 5 or fewer employees. And because it's CDBG, and the whole point of these funds is to serve low-income populations, at least one or more of these employees has to be considered coming from a low-income household, or be a business that serves a low-income area and with essential services. It's a one-time grant. In the case of Exponential Impact, they created kind of a program over several months where businesses had access, the participating businesses had access to this technical assistance, series of workshops, and things like that. So for the CFIG, as we call the Frontage and Improvement Grant, that is inactive, but I did still want to share with people what those funds can do. And those were through those were designed to also be a competitive grant. If we see that this is a need that comes up, I would love for this to be a topic of discussion for this action planning process. If there is a community need to get the CFIG program back up and running, that is something that we can consider. In the meantime, we had significant success with the Microenterprise Assistance Program with Exponential Impact. I'd love to tell you about how that went. So, as I mentioned, we worked with Exponential Impact at the start of the pandemic, and it just having an economic development activity was new for us in the first place. So we wanted to, we're kind of working from scratch. I mean, from our experience, Exponential Impact was very experienced in doing what they do. So we put our heads together and figured out the most impactful way to serve micro enterprises. So a lot of people may have heard of the Survive and Thrive program that was built during to respond to the pandemic. This whole 2.0 nomenclature, it was meant to kind of capture those who were left behind by other traditional sources of support offered by other pandemic assistance sources. So this program, the Survive and Thrive 2.0, this pie chart that you're looking at here, this represents all of the industries and local businesses that were represented in the participating program, or in the program participants. We have retail, financial and business services, food and beverage, instructional and educational, health and wellness, legal services, and entertainment and experiential economy type of businesses that took advantage of this pilot program. The vast majority, or virtually half, as you can see, are retail and food and beverage, over half. This program provided direct financial assistance for rent, utilities, payroll, and maintenance. That was a very specific list of eligible costs that they would directly fund in addition to professional services and trainings, online trainings. So the scope of assistance was fairly substantial for each business. The average request was around $21,000, and the average the average grant was about $15,000. We had a 62% acceptance rate. We did have a way more demand than we had the funding for, but ultimately we were able to, Exponential Impact was able to approve 23 grants. If you're doing the math really quickly, you can see that this is way more than $176,000, and that is because we funded it with the CARES Act funding here. I didn't mention the funding source. We did get quite a substantial amount of CARES Act dollars in 2020. So this pilot project was much larger than a typical year's allocation. We wanted this program to target those who maybe did not have the typical access to traditional forms of support, either from the SBA, the PPP loans. We did hit our target demographics of women, minority, veteran-owned businesses. You can see here that of those three groups, they comprise 91% of the program participants, and 18% had not applied for any form of previous COVID relief funding. One of the requirements of this program is that your business had to be viable pre-COVID, and you have to have been in business for over a year. But as you can see here, a lot of these were established businesses, and 41% had been in business for over 5 years, and the rest, about 59%, had been between 1 and 5 years. So the impact on this, one, it did get a lot of attention. This project was recognized by HUD as a best practice, and our division manager and the director of Exponential Impact did get to present these awesome findings on a national scale. So that was great. It also just created a resource for people who couldn't access those traditional forms of COVID assistance, like SBA loans and the Payroll Protection Program funds. And the best part was that not only did this help people survive, but 20% of the participating businesses were able to add staff after going through this program. And we're really pleased that we targeted, that we were able to target our high needs zip codes so well. Fully half of the participating businesses were in 4 of the highest need zip codes, 3 being in the southeast and 1 being on the west side in the old Colorado City area. And not only were the businesses there, but the people who run them, the business owners, also live there. So it's truly that was more than we could ask for. So with 2022, learning from what we knowing what we know now after this pilot project with exponential impact. For 2022, we would like to stay in the Southeast and really support investment there, specifically by supporting projects like the Community Investment Trust and Solid Rock Community Development Corporation, and competing with to compete with other on the same level as other businesses. And we'd also like to continue to collaborate with Exponential Impact to continue this assistance to other local and diverse microenterprises. And I wanted to kind of talk about some of the assumptions and values behind these goals. You know, I did share a little bit about what we learned from the pilot project. So we just kind of want to amplify what works, and we want to really dig deeper into understanding the barriers that the business owners that participated in this past program, to understand what barriers businesses like them undergo with regard to traditional financing and other business support resources. And again, because this is such a small slice of our funds, and just funding in general, $176,000 isn't a huge amount. We want to be strategic with them. And what we learned with Exponential Impact is that even with a grant of $15,000 to $20,000, it can mean a lot to small businesses to keep them viable and to create more jobs. And lastly, we want to support our partners' plans. And there is a lot of momentum and energy in the Southeast right now to create more investment opportunities. And there's just a lot of direction that we can go from there. So lastly, I have your input here, and that is just to show that we are open to hearing from you all and hearing what you're going through. If you're a small business owner, if you work with small businesses, whether in finance or through nonprofit assistance, you know, what are you seeing? So today I wanted to give you some prompts, and I'm excuse the the asterisk on the bottom. This was left over from a presentation that I gave on homelessness about equity. I do have another resource here about equity in small businesses, but equity is a big goal of ours in community development, and making everything we do, everything we fund, everyone we work with, we want to make sure that we are aiming for equitable outcomes and helping people create more equitable service models. So I know there is a little bit of a lag, time lag between when we're chatting. So I want to give folks a little bit of time to ask their questions. But for those of you on the phone, I'm just going to read really quickly what these conversation prompts are. We're really interested in learning what you are seeing and experiencing, again, as a business owner or whatever area you work in. And what are you seeing that's working? What's not working? Again, how can we make equitable outcomes a reality? And do our annual goals make sense to you? I can go back to that slide where our goals are really about working in the Southeast and continuing with the Micro Enterprise Assistance Fund. And just any thoughts, questions, comments, or concerns? I do see a couple questions. I'm not sure if they're comments. So of those businesses that received funding, do you know the breakdown of individual local enterprises or companies versus local franchisees of larger chains? That's an excellent question. And I don't know that off the top of my head, but I can get that information for you. And that's a good reminder that we will be posting the questions from the chat, again, with all of the meeting materials. So if I don't have an answer to your question now, I can definitely make sure that I include it in materials that we post after the fact. But thank you, that's a really good question.
While anyone's thinking about or perhaps typing a question, this is Barb Van Hoy. I just wanted to emphasize that we really welcome any thoughts and feedback from folks about what you're experiencing, what you're hearing, you're experiencing. If you think of anything or hear things past this meeting, we have a couple more meetings this week, but we also will be accepting comments, by email, by phone, for quite a while during this process. And I'll post that information again in the chat.
So again, sharing the goals here just to see if anybody has any thoughts about our goals of continuing this program with exponential impact and moving forward with working with Solid Rock. If anyone has any thoughts about the CFIG program that I mentioned earlier, again, taking the kind of temperature of the local economy, we learned from a lot of local folks here that exterior improvement projects is not high on anyone's priority list right now. But if you feel differently, let us know.
And for those of you on the phone, if you want to unmute to ask a question, you can do that by pressing *6.
I also would like to acknowledge that we have some of our colleagues from the Community Development Division with us. So if anybody has any input from those of you who are joining us from the staff, feel free to jump in, or if anyone has any questions for staff members, now we have some other resources here besides me and Barb.
So this is a little bit new this year that we are hosting several different meetings around our action plan that are focused on these different topics. So I would also invite any of you who are tuning in, if you think there are other organizations in the community that we should be reaching out to, if you know of other organization individuals or businesses, business support networks, that we can connect with, who should connect with us. We welcome that kind of input too.
I also wanted to share a little bit about the timeline behind what we're doing. As you know, as Barb just mentioned, we're having a variety of public hearings or public meetings, basically, to hear input on a variety of topics. We're also doing one-on-one interviews with stakeholders, and all of this goes into we put all that input into the draft of the 2022 action plan. And we will post a draft of that on December 13th. And that will be available for 30 days. It'll be posted for public review. We'll also have a public meeting to go over that draft and make sure that we heard you correctly. We'll go over any questions that you might have, take more feedback on the plan draft, and then council reviews that draft and hopefully approves it in mid-February. And then at some point, once we hear what the final congressional budget looks like and what HUD's allocation looks like, we submit to HUD. But in the spring, that's when our general grant application period opens for a number of our funding sources. And then our program year starts on April 1st. So all of this lead up to starting on April 1st. Again, I don't see more questions coming in, but I definitely want to stress that this is not the only time to send your questions and comments in. We have a lot of materials. As I mentioned, we have a video describing our 5-year planning process and how that feeds into our annual planning process, if that's something that is you want to learn more about. You can go to our website. You can also check out the recording of this public hearing and the ones coming up on Thursday night and Saturday morning on infrastructure and affordable housing, as well as yesterday's topic on homelessness. And feel free to email us with any questions or comments at communitydevelopment@coloradosprings.gov or give us a call at 719-385-5912.
Hey, Catherine?
Yes.
It looks like Barb answered the one question that Jay had about, are there plans to partner with any other agencies in addition to exponential impact and social rock to accomplish CD's goals? Are there any other local organizations that might be able to help, accelerators, incubators, etc.? I don't know if you want to expand on that. And then we also had, where can I learn about more community investment trust?
Oh, those are really good. Questions. So I don't have a website for the Community Investment Trust yet, but that is something that we can post with the materials from this public meeting on our website after the fact. Can share a little bit about that with folks now. I'm going to tag in my colleagues here. Steve, are you on the call?
Yeah, good morning.
Just wondering if we have any thoughts about how to work with knowing what the landscape is of business incubators.
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
So the question is, are there plans to partner with any other agencies in addition to Exponential Impact and Solid Rock to accomplish our goals? Are there any other local organizations that might be able to help, accelerators, incubators, etc.?
Do we have a list of them? I'd be happy to take a look and have some conversations with other agencies.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. If you know of any, please, connect us. I think we the relationship with the folks that we've worked with now have kind of been just fortuitous meetings. And anything more about that landscape that we can learn about, please connect us. Again, a lot of what we put together during the start of the pandemic, you know, it was very quick. It was kind of connecting with a lot of the small business resources around the city, and this is we found an incubator that could work around our CDBG guidelines, and that we're already serving the community that these funds are designed to serve. So if you have any questions, if you're watching this or listening to this out there and you have any ideas about other incubators who might be interested in working with us and partnering with us to serve these target populations, please, by all means, contact us at the info on the screen. And to the question about the Community Investment Trust, we will get more information for you there.
Also, just a reminder that each of these sessions is being recorded and will be available on the city's website at our community development hub there. I did post the link to the page where you can follow this whole process, where we'll be posting those, and we also encourage you to share with folks to try to get the word out. The more people we hear from about what they're experiencing in the community really feeds into our ability to effectively assess the most important needs of the community so that we can meet those as best we can.
Well, with that, I think we'll wrap up. And again, we welcome your questions. And thanks so much for joining us today.